I present to you the Arise students of 2023, and Joel Grayson is up first.
All right, yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. So today's solar panels are as good as they are thanks to decades of research ever since the 1950s. And I'm happy to present to you today about some research that I've been doing with Colloquium in Dr. Stephanie Lee's lab for the last 5 weeks. So we looked at organic optoelectronics. Optoelectronics are devices that convert between electricity and light. So this screen, for example, converts electricity into light. Solar panels convert light to electricity. And the organic part means that it's carbon-based. So we looked particularly at this compound over here, which is called this 4-bromophenylmine 4,4-azobipyridine. And it is the combination of 3 molecules. So it has a azobipyridine core with 2 this 4-bromophenylmine molecules that are attracted with hydrogen bonding and dipole-dipole forces. So that's called a charge transfer complex. And this is a potential material for future organic solar cells and other optoelectronics. So we turn these into crystals by placing them between 2 glass slides, as you can see here, in the powder form. And then we melted it, and as it cooled, it then formed crystals, which look like that. And we wanted to make it twist, so yet another element. So when crystals form in spherulites, they have a center, and then from there are fibers that grow out. And we wanted these fibers to twist as they're growing, so that we can see different orientations of this compound, and also it's been shown that twisted crystals conduct well and are better for devices. So in order to make it twist, we played around with melting temperature, cooling temperature, pressure, and also different additives. And we found that the best conditions to make this crystal twist are to heat it at 140 degrees, to cool it at 70 degrees without any pressure, and mix in an additive called tamargum, which is a tree resin. And so this is a photo of those conditions, and it's twisting. So once we had this film, we then wanted to characterize it, and we did that in a few ways. So over here is scanning electron microscopy, which is a way which allows you to look at things very, very zoomed in, very tiny things. And we were able to see in this image that the fibers are indeed twisting, which is cool. And over here is absorbance data. So the x-axis is for wavelength, and the y-axis is for how much the material absorbs. And in this chart, you can see that it absorbs light of many different wavelengths, which is good. It means it has a broad spectrum of light that it takes in, which is, promising that it might be able to be used in devices by taking in many different wavelengths of light. We did a photoluminescence test, which showed that our compound is not fluorescent. It's not good at emitting light, so it's not really good for things like OLEDs or other screens. And we also made a photodetector out of it, which was a little finicky, and we weren't quite able to get it to work, which leads me to future work. We want to test it in more devices to make sure that, or to determine really if it could be used in these organic optoelectronic devices. And since this compound does absorb light pretty well across a broad spectrum, it definitely deserves future investigation and study. This is one of many compounds, as I said earlier, that are being looked at for optoelectronic devices, and so we need to look at all the compounds and find which are the best ones for future devices. So I'm very happy to have been part of this research. I think it's really cool that in this opportunity I had the chance to actually contribute to research into future organic solar cells. So I want to thank my mentor, Pallavi, and Dr. Stephanie Lee for letting me do this in her lab. And there are a bunch of other people in the lab who were helpful, and I also want to thank the Foundation for funding this. Thanks. We have a Q&A
There's a
now?
Q&A.
Okay, so yeah, any questions? Yes.
That was great. I'm curious, what was like was there anything surprising that came up in your research that you didn't necessarily expect when you entered?
I didn't really know what to expect when I entered, so I guess everything was a surprise. I was surprised how much time we got to spend in the lab, and also at how much we were able to pick up, or I was able to pick up in terms of material science. I tried reading a few of the papers from the lab before going there, and couldn't understand anything. But I've read a lot of papers in this experience, and I feel much more comfortable with it. So I guess I'm surprised that how easy it was to sort of get into the field and pick up the lexicon and be able to work with the stuff in a short time period.
Small. The different lines on the graph, can you tell me what they mean?
Which graph?
On the left.
Yeah, sure. So I know it's a little bit blurry, it's hard to see here, but there are 6 lines for 3 different types of light. So here we were looking at absorbance. The 3 types of light that we looked at were unpolarized light, which is like the normal light we see here, polarized at 0 degrees light, which means that the light is all in the same polarization. In other words, the light waves are all parallel to each other. And then cross-polarized light at 90 degrees. So the light is all parallel, but in order to be measured, it has to turn so that it can be hit the detector in red. So for each of those 3 different types of light, we had measurements of light bands and dark bands of this crystal. So in this crystal, you see how there's sort of lighter blue regions and then darker blue regions? So we looked at the individual light blue regions, or the light regions called light bands, and the dark bands separately for those 3 different types of light.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
What was the hardest part about working on this project?
I think for me, the hardest part was reading those papers. It took a lot of endurance. And yeah, I definitely had to ask a lot of questions to understand it.
Okay, if there are no more questions, we'll move on to the next person.
All right. Yeah.